The impossible sequel. They said the Grand Line was the graveyard of pirates. They said a blue-nosed reindeer could never work in live action without looking like a nightmare. They said Netflix couldn't possibly follow up on the miracle of Season 1. But as the sails of the Going Merry catch the winds of 2026, we finally have our answer. From the rain-soaked execution platform of Loguetown to the pink cherry blossom snow of Drum Island, One Piece live action. Season 2 isn't just a sequel, it's a declaration of war against the live-action curse. But let's be real for a second. Did it actually live up to the impossible hype? Or did the massive $18 million per episode budget drown under the weight of fan expectations? Today, we are breaking down every single episode, the CGI triumphs, the casting shocks, and the reality of that controversial ending. Welcome to the Grand Line. Episode 1. The Will of D. Loguetown Review. Episode 1 brings us to Loguetown, the final stop in the East Blue. Factually, the production design here is a massive step up. The expectation from fans was a bright, colourful port city, like we saw in the anime. However, the reality we got was a rain-drenched, noir-inspired town that felt heavy with history. The execution platform set was a 40-foot physical structure built in Cape Town, and you can feel that scale. When Luffy stands on that platform, the vertigo is real. What went well here was the introduction of Captain Smoker and Tashigi. Smoker doesn't feel like a cartoon villain. He feels like a weary, dangerous lawman who actually understands the threat Luffy poses. Loguetown felt lived in. The sword shop scene with Zoro and Tashigi was a highlight. It felt grounded and respectful to the Sandai Kitetsu lore. The fight between Alvida, Buggy, and Luffy was choreographed with a mix of slapstick and genuine peril. Because this is only an 8-episode season, the showrunners had to cut the Daddy Masterson duel and the cooking contest. For hardcore fans, the reality of these cuts hurt, as it made the stay in Loguetown feel a bit like a sprint rather than a journey. Let's talk about the climax of Episode 1. The expectation for the lightning strike that saves Luffy was through the roof. Fans were worried it would look like a cheap Deus Ex Machina. The reality, however, was a masterclass in VFX. The production team used high-speed cameras and practical lighting rigs to make the lightning strike feel like a cosmic event. This is where the Will of D theory starts to take root in the live-action canon. What went well was the Buggy and Alvida dynamic. They provided the necessary levity before the sheer terror of Smoker's Moku Moku no Mi was revealed. Seeing Smoker turn into physical smoke in a live-action setting was a make-or-break moment for the VFX budget. And it looked incredible. It didn't look like a cartoon. Episode 2. Reverse Mountain. The Ascent. We leave the shores of the East Blue and face the Red Line. The expectation was a CGI-heavy montage of the ship going up the mountain. The reality? A claustrophobic, high-stakes disaster movie sequence. The production facts behind this episode are fascinating. They used a massive hydraulic gimbal for the Going Merry, which allowed the ship to tilt at extreme angles while the actors were on deck. This wasn't just a green screen, the cast was actually being tossed around. The introduction of Laboon. Fans were terrified the giant whale would look like a bad CGI monster, but the blend of animatronics for the close-up eye contact scenes and massive-scale CGI for the breach was breathtaking. The emotional weight of Laboon's story hit just as hard as it did in the manga. Some of the dialogue between the crew during the Red Line ascent felt a bit expository. The legacy of Crocus. The reality gave us a much deeper connection to the lore. Crocus felt like a man who had seen everything. His interaction with Brook, via the foreshadowing of the music, was a beautiful Easter egg for fans who know what's coming hundreds of episodes later. This episode successfully transitioned the show from a pirate adventure into a world-building epic. Loguetown and Reverse Mountain served as the perfect prologue to the Grand Line. Episode 3. The Hunter's Feast. Whiskey Peak Review. Episode 3 brings the Straw Hats to the cactus-shaped island of Whiskey Peak. Factually, The production design here is a standout. The sets were built with a unique Western meets desert aesthetic, featuring massive cactus structures that look both organic and alien. Most fans expected a carbon copy of the anime's party atmosphere, lots of drinking, singing, and then a sudden comedic shift into a fight. Showrunner Matt Owens opted for a noir thriller approach. While the party is there, the tension is dialed up to 11. This is Zoro's best episode to date. The scene where he realizes the town is a trap while everyone else is passed out is peak badass Zoro. The choreography moved away from flashy CGI and leaned into gritty, practical stunt work. However, the transition from the welcome party to the betrayal felt a bit accelerated. The Vivi reveal, from agent to princess. The emotional core of episode 3 is the reveal of Princess Vivi. Factually, the casting of Charithra Chandran was a major win for Netflix. She brings a royal dignity to the role, even when she's playing the low-level Agent Miss Wednesday. Fans expected her reveal as the Princess of Alabasta to be a shocking cliffhanger at the very end of the episode. The script reveals her identity much earlier to create immediate stakes for Nami. The bond between Nami and Vivi is significantly deepened here. Instead of Nami just wanting the 1 billion berries for the rescue mission, the live action adds a layer of shared burden, 2 women trying to save their respective homes from ruin. What's most impressive is the VFX of the Baroque Works agents. Mr. Five's explosive powers were handled with a realistic blast radius. Every time he flicked a projectile, the sound design and camera shake made it feel like a grenade going off. This grounded the Devil Fruit powers in a way that makes the Grand Line feel far more lethal than the East Blue ever did. Episode 4. All Sunday's Shadow, The Enigma of Nico Robin. Episode 4 shifts the focus from the foot soldiers to the leadership of Baroque Works. This episode feels like a high-stakes spy film. We start to see the hierarchy, the numbered agents, the billions, and the mysterious leader, Mr. Zero. Nico Robin, Miss All Sunday, is arguably the best casting choice of the season. Her entrance on the Going Merry was shot with heavy shadows and slow motion, giving her that classic femme fatale mystery. Fans expected Robin to immediately use her Hana Hana no Mi to choke out the crew or show off her power. Preparing for the Giants. By the end of episode 4, the Straw Hats have a clear mission: get Vivi to Alabasta. But the Grand Line has other plans. The episode concludes with the log pose locking onto Little Garden, and the visual of the island in the distance is breathtaking. The reality of the Baroque Works threat is now established, making the upcoming battle with Sir Crocodile feel inevitable and terrifying. Episode 5. Honor Among Giants, The Scale of Little Garden. Episode 5 lands us in the humid, dangerous jungles of Little Garden. Factually, the production team utilized a mix of the lush forests in South Africa and massive indoor volume stages to create the prehistoric atmosphere. Fans expected the giants, Dory and Broggy, to be scaled down to 15 or 20 feet to save on CGI costs. Netflix went full scale. Using forced perspective, the same technique Peter Jackson used in The Lord of the Rings, the showrunners made the giants feel like literal mountains. The actors for Dory and Broggy were filmed on separate, oversized sets, which were then digitally composited with the Straw Hats. When Luffy meets Dory, the camera stays at ground level, making the audience feel as small as a bug. The dialogue about Elbaf's honor wasn't treated as a joke, it was played with the weight of a Shakespearean tragedy. The villain reveal, Mr. 3 and the Art of Murder. While the giants are the spectacle, the real meat of episode 5 is the arrival of Mr. 3. Dasmalchian's performance is a masterclass in creepy bureaucracy. He doesn't see himself as a brawler, he sees himself as an artist. Fans expected his Doru Doru no Mi, wax fruit, to look like yellow Play-Doh or cheap plastic. The VFX team went for a high-gloss molten look. When the wax cools, it looks like jagged, sharp porcelain. This made the giant candle service's trap feel genuinely life-threatening. Seeing Zoro, Nami, and Vivi slowly being encased in white, suffocating wax added a layer of body horror that the anime never quite captured. Usopp's turning point. This is where the Warrior of the Sea dream begins. Factually, Usopp's performance in this episode is his best yet. The expectation was that he'd just be the funny coward again. The reality? We see the internal struggle. His fear isn't a joke anymore. It's a hurdle he has to jump to save his friends. His interaction with the giants provides the factual foundation for his eventual journey to Elbaf. Episode 6. The Silent Storm. Within the first 5 minutes, the vibe shifts to a medical emergency. Nami, the heart and brain of the ship, collapses. The reality of the Grand Line's Kestia virus hits the crew like a freight train. The Nami's physical decline was visceral. It wasn't just pretty TV sick. She looked pale, sweating, and genuinely delirious. The showrunners wanted to emphasize that the sea itself is a character in this episode. Fans thought the journey to the next island would be a quick montage. We see the crew working as a desperate unit. Vivi takes a leadership role here that fans didn't expect. She is the one who keeps the crew focused, showing her growth from a scared spy to a true princess and a strategic ally. The creaking of the Going Merry felt like a heartbeat under stress. Midway through the episode, we get a brief but crucial encounter with Wapol's scouts or his tin plate pirates. Episode 7. The Doctor is in, climbing the drum rock. Episode 7 shifts the tone from prehistoric adventure to a survival drama. Factually, the production moved from the lush jungles of the previous episodes to a massive winter set in Cape Town, utilizing thousands of tons of biodegradable artificial snow. Fans expected a quick trek up the mountain. The showrunners emphasized the physical toll. Watching Luffy carry Nami and Sanji up a vertical cliff in a blizzard was a visceral experience. Iñaki Godoy's performance here was a 10/10. You could feel the desperation of a captain who refuses to let his navigator die. The introduction of Wapol. While Wapol is often seen as a joke villain, the live action made him genuinely loathsome, a spoiled tyrant who hoards medicine while his people freeze. His Baku Baku no Mi, munch munch fruit powers, were handled with a steampunk, mechanical aesthetic that made his transformations feel clunky yet threatening. Some fans felt the hiking segment took up too much screen time. However, the fact is, this was necessary to build the stakes. Without the struggle, the payoff of reaching the castle wouldn't have felt earned. This episode proved that the Grand Line is as much about battling nature as it is about battling pirates. The Chopper reveal, a triumph of VFX. Then, the moment of truth. The door opens, and we see him, Tony, Chopper. For close-ups, they used a highly advanced animatronic puppet to give the actors a real being to interact with. For movement and his different points, they transitioned into high-fidelity CGI voiced by Michaela Hoover. Fans were terrified of a creepy, hyper-realistic reindeer or a cheap plushie. They nailed the cute but soulful balance. Chopper looks like a creature that belongs in this world. His blue nose wasn't just a dot of paint. It was a glowing bioluminescent feature that added to his monster lore. Katie Sagal as Dr. Koreha and Mark Haralick as Dr. Hiraluk. Factually, the chemistry between these two veterans elevated the show to prestige TV levels. Sagal's Koreha was a perfect blend of rockstar energy and tough love. Her performance gave the witch character a layer of hidden grief that made her relationship with Chopper feel like a real mother-son bond. Episode 8. The Bloom. The emotional finale. The finale, Episode 8, is a race against Wapol's army and a battle for the legacy of a quack doctor. The VFX triumph. The heavy point transformation. When Chopper finally steps up to fight alongside Luffy, the CGI transition was seamless. It didn't look like a cartoon. It looked like a transformation out of a horror fantasy film. The cherry blossoms in the snow. Factually, this scene used the largest amount of digital particles in the entire season. The expectation was a pretty pink sky, The reality was a cinematic masterpiece that reduced every fan, old and new, to tears. Here it looks. When does a man die? Speech was kept almost word for word, proving that the showrunners know when to leave perfection alone. The Straw Hats setting sail with their new doctor while the pink snow falls behind them. The season ends on a massive cliffhanger. We see the Going Merry heading toward Alabasta, and we get a 3-0 second post-credit tease of Sir Crocodile Joe Manganiello and Nico Robin looking at a map of the desert. Some fans were furious that we didn't get the Alabasta War yet, but the reality is that this Drum Island ending gave Chopper the spotlight he deserved without being overshadowed by a civil war. Conclusion. The verdict on Season 2. So, did Season 2 stick the landing? Factually, yes. The viewership numbers for the finale were record-breaking. The reality is that Netflix successfully navigated the most difficult part of the One Piece story, the part where it gets weird. They proved that giants, reindeer, and waxmen can coexist with human drama. Season 2 was more emotional, more expensive, and more ambitious than Season 1. By focusing on the found family aspect of the crew, they've set the stage for a Season 3 that will likely be the biggest television event of 2027. Thanks for joining us for this journey through the Grand Line. Was Chopper everything you hoped for? Are you ready for the Desert of Alabasta? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay part of the crew. Until next time, stay legendary. The One Piece is real.